Chosen one, pay close attention to the shift in the atmosphere, because evidence doesn't lie. The scales of justice are now in your favor, and this whole community will be in shock when the truth behind your struggle is finally unveiled. A storm is closing in on those who thought they could suppress you, as the truth has been methodically building its own case in ways that are now fully visible to the authorities. You are no longer the person that things merely happened to. You are the main character who was protected by invisible forces all along. Every great arc begins with a moment of contrast. Yours begins here. Right now, somewhere connected to your life, there is a person in full panic. Think of the scene: papers everywhere, books pulled off shelves, calls going unanswered. A person who spent years projecting composure, spiritual authority, and the image of someone blessed and untouchable, now frantically searching for an exit from a situation built with their own hands. Brick by brick, choice by deliberate choice, what they constructed is now closing in around them, and then there is you, standing still, breathing, not because you are unaware of what is unfolding, but because something inside you settled long ago and has not moved since. You went through the version of events that was designed to destroy you. You felt the full weight of it. You grieved what needed grieving. You sat in it when sitting in it was all you could do. And then, without fanfare, without an audience, you got up. You kept going. Day after day, in the quiet and the unglamorous, you kept going. That is what a tree does. It does not negotiate with the wind. It does not brace against the storm in a way that makes the storm personal. It roots deeper. It bends just enough not to break. And when the storm passes, it is still standing with a root system now deeper than anything that came before, while everything around it that was not genuinely rooted got scattered across the ground. You are the tree. What could not root in truth got scattered. Divine justice does not always announce itself loudly. It does not always arrive with ceremony. Most of the time it moves the way dawn moves, so gradually that you almost miss the precise moment when the darkness ended and the light took over, and then suddenly everything is illuminated, and you can finally see clearly what you were walking through the whole time. That is exactly where you are standing right now. The light has come all the way in. There is nowhere left for anything false to conceal itself. And what is being revealed is not just about you. It is about every decision, every action, every concealed motive of the people who worked against you, because the scales of justice do not only tip toward the good, they also expose the rot that was artificially keeping the wrong side elevated. What you build inward, you eventually wear outward. What is sown in secret is harvested in public. What is stolen from a pure source does not stay held. It returns with everything it collected on the way back. You are at the moment of return. Here is the first revelation, and this one is going to reframe everything you thought you understood about why your life went the way it did. You were not targeted because you were weak. You were targeted because you were extraordinary. And the people who came for you knew that before you fully did. Most people, looking back at what was done to them, ask why me, as if the answer contains something shameful, as if being targeted is evidence of deficiency. But in your situation, the real answer to that question is the complete opposite of the version you were handed. You were targeted because of what you carry, because of the quality of your presence, because you have something in you. You have always had it, that people sense before you even speak a word. A warmth, a magnetism, a frequency that makes people feel genuinely seen and safe without you performing any of it. You are, in the truest sense, a sanctuary for the people who encounter you, and someone looked at that sanctuary and made a calculation, not a spiritual one, a strategic one. The logic was this: if proximity to you is maintained, if your frequency keeps cycling through their orbit, and if you are never allowed to fully step into what you are, then your energy can be redirected indefinitely towards sustaining their operation. You were not chosen as a victim. You were identified as a resource. And so the groundwork was laid. Over a long stretch of time, Methodically, the approach began with closeness, family, community, trusted access. Then carefully and consistently, the work of keeping you from yourself began, keeping you doubting your gifts, cycling you through patterns of almost, but not quite, keeping your inner foundation, your self-worth, your sense of safety, your trust in your own perception, just unstable enough that you could never fully land in your power and stay there. Think about the seasons when things were flowing, and then something came sideways and broke the momentum before it could compound. Think about the opportunities that dissolved at exactly the wrong moment. Think about the relationships that turned cold without any satisfying explanation. Think about how consistent the interference was, how it seemed to know exactly where to strike and when. That consistency was not luck. It was management. You were being managed. If these words stirred your consciousness, hype this video to help more chosen ones awaken to this. And here is the detail that the evidence will make plain. The effort required to manage you escalated over time. It had to, because the nature of genuine light is to grow. Your gifts did not stay static through those seasons. They were expanding every time you healed something, every time you quietly chose yourself in a way that nobody witnessed. Each time your frequency climbed, the machinery working against you had to work harder to pull it back. More stories circulated, more manufactured disruptions inserted at exactly the moments you were nearest a breakthrough. The escalation itself is the evidence. It proves that what was done was intentional, and that what you carry was always extraordinary enough to warrant that kind of sustained effort. The fatal flaw in the whole design was something they could not see coming, because people who operate from darkness always make the same miscalculation. They consistently underestimate what happens when the light finally fully wakes up. This is not a situation involving only one person. There are others who played a role, and most of them had no idea what they were actually participating in. There is a community connected to this, tight-knit, spiritually or religiously oriented, held together by shared beliefs and genuine goodwill. People who prayed together, who gave to one another, who trusted in something larger than themselves. Sincere people, doing what they genuinely believed was right, and all of that sincerity was used as a weapon aimed in your direction. Here is the mechanics of it. The central figure embedded themselves in that community from a position of borrowed spiritual authority, presenting as the mature one, the trusted guide, the person to turn to for discernment and prayer. And from inside that position of trust, a narrative about you was quietly circulated, not loudly, precisely. The most damaging lies always move through concerned tones and hushed conversations dressed as care. Something is off with this person. I am worried for them. We should keep some distance and pray. Delivered with the right gravity, by the right person, in the right language, and it lands. You felt the result of it, the sudden drop in temperature from people you considered close, conversations shifting when you entered the space, people who had been warm becoming politely distant, then simply absent. You were not imagining it. Something was said about you, in spaces you were not in, designed to ensure that the people who might have stood beside you chose not to. Because a person who is fully seen and genuinely supported by a community that knows their real character is almost impossible to suppress. So the community had to be redirected. You've probably noticed a lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have stopped publishing, videos pulled, voices silenced. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. That's exactly why I'm putting you on to something real, Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching Chosen Ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation and attacks, while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app. It's declassified consciousness technology the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play, and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. Join Destiny Engine to support your favorite channels and use it for your own rise. It's a 360 win. Start your Destiny Engine for $7 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. But here is something important to hold on to. The people in that community who pulled back from you were not adversaries. They were deceived. There is a meaningful difference. They made the choice most people make when someone they trust tells them something. They accepted it, because questioning it would have cost them their standing in the only circle of belonging they had. That is an understandable human calculation, even if the consequences of it were real and painful for you. Those same people are going to have to carry the weight of realizing that their compliance, their willingness to accept a fabricated account without independent examination, had real impact on a real person. That weight is its own kind of reckoning. And within that community, there were people who felt resistance, who sat with what they were told and sensed that something did not fully add up, who wanted to ask a question but calculated the cost and went quiet. Those people went quiet, but they watched, and they remembered everything they saw. That matters. Keep it in the back of your mind, because what quiet witnesses hold in memory eventually becomes testimony. When you understand how much was actually stolen, you will understand why the restoration coming toward you is proportional to the scale of the loss. The first theft was energetic, your Midas touch, not in a shallow sense, but in the deep and genuine sense of your ability to transform what you engage with, to draw resources and people and aligned opportunities toward you with a kind of natural ease, was being continuously siphoned, not visibly, through proximity and spiritual mechanics, through a channel constructed so gradually and so quietly that you never felt the drain as theft. You simply felt perpetually almost in abundance, almost arrived, always within reach of a fullness that kept not quite materializing. There's a jar of the purest honey, overflowing, rich, regenerating from within, with a hidden hole near the base. You kept filling it from your own depth, and someone else kept quietly collecting what ran through. The second theft was your narrative, your reputation in the circles where it mattered. Your character was quietly dismantled and replaced with a fiction crafted to serve one purpose, keeping the people who might have championed you at a careful distance from you instead. The third theft is material, and it is the one with the most visible resolution ahead. There is something tangible, property, funds, an inheritance, something that belonged to you by covenant or by right, that was intercepted, not misplaced, deliberately rerouted before it could reach you, by someone who made specific choices to ensure you were excluded from what was legally and rightfully yours. That material interference required collaboration. A solo operation cannot reroute something of that nature without at least one additional set of hands. And when two people coordinate a concealment, they always produce more contradictions than one person would alone, because their accounts have to align across two independent sets of decisions, communications and records. When those accounts are examined by the right professional eyes, the inconsistencies between them are not subtle. They are the kind of inconsistencies that exist specifically because something was being hidden. Those eyes are on the documentation right now. Here is the turn, the detail that reveals why you were never as exposed as the people working against you believed. There is someone assigned to you, perhaps a grandparent, or an older presence that passed before you felt finished with them. Perhaps someone younger, who left this life too soon. What you may have noticed is that their absence landed harder than seemed proportionate, a grief that felt larger than logic could explain. That disproportionate weight was your soul recognizing something your mind did not yet have language for. This was not only a personal bond, it was a spiritual assignment. This person was placed specifically in your lineage, in your frequency, to serve as your protector, and when they left the physical world, they did not leave you. Every morning that arrived after a night that should have finished your momentum, that was intervention, every piece of information that appeared at precisely the moment it was needed, that was not coincidence. Every situation that was calibrated to destroy you and somehow did not land the way it was designed to, something was working on your behalf in the unseen. Your guardian on the other side was not only holding your hand through the difficult seasons, they were building your case. Every deliberate act of harm done against you was noted and catalogued by something older and more thorough than any human legal system, and everything catalogued was eventually delivered into the hands of people in the physical world who have both the authority and the obligation to follow it. The most powerful evidence in the entire case cannot be touched, fabricated, or altered. It lives inside you, in the quality of who you became through conditions designed to diminish you, in the fact that after every season of manufactured turbulence, you are still here, whole, healed, carrying the original frequency they were trying to extinguish. That chosen one is the most compelling exhibit in the file. This is the moment everything has been building toward. Remember the quiet people in the community, the ones who sensed that the narrative about you did not fully hold, who went silent rather than risk the cost of speaking. Hold that alongside something else now. There was a person who was sent in close to your life with a specific purpose, not a random presence, someone deliberately positioned to arrive looking like genuine connection, like belonging, like something your heart had quietly been reaching toward. The assignment was to get close enough to wound you at the level where you were most open, your self-worth, your willingness to trust, your growing sense of being worthy of real love. The logic behind it was precise. A person cycling through the particular pain of almost connecting and being disappointed over and over, quietly, chronically, stays in a suppressed frequency at the level of the heart, and a suppressed heart frequency is the easiest to harvest from. If that wound could be kept open, the operation could continue without interruption. The assignment was not completed. Something shifted when this person encountered you directly, the real version of you, the warmth, the quality of your presence when you are simply being yourself without any performance attached to it. Something in this person moved in a direction they did not anticipate. They could not carry out what they had agreed to do, and what they chose instead, the step they took in place of the one they were supposed to take, changed the entire landscape of what follows. They became a witness, and they documented what they knew. What they knew was specific. They had been given information that only someone trusted at the center of this operation would be given. They had observed the coordination between the key figures. They had heard the intent described explicitly enough that there is no reasonable interpretation available other than the deliberate one. Intent, the premeditated, purposeful nature of what was done, is exactly what elevates a situation from a personal grievance into something the formal structures of justice treat with complete seriousness. The defense has no foundation left to stand on. You cannot construct a counter-argument against a witness who was present for the planning. Watch what happens when the first structural piece of a constructed deception fails. Everything that depended on it for support begins its own collapse, not all at once, but in a cascade that accelerates as each layer gives way. The financial picture is crystallizing in a way that cannot be managed or redirected. There was money, there was property, there was something connected to a legal agreement or an estate, something that was yours, that should have reached you, that was rerouted by deliberate decision. The word lost implies accident. What happened here was a decision, and the documentation trail is now confirming the decision to the people who have been tasked with following it. The professional who was brought in to advise the other side is now looking at the exposure that comes from having operated on incomplete information provided by a client who needed certain questions to remain unasked. Those questions are now being asked by people outside their client's influence. That is the moment an advisor starts calculating the distance between their professional obligations and their client's interests and begins to create separation. But there is a layer beyond the financial that is going to produce the most profound shock. The community giving, the collective donations, the funds contributed in sincere faith by people who believed their generosity was being honored and directed somewhere meaningful. A significant portion of that giving was redirected for personal use. The people who gave from genuine sacrifice believed they were contributing to something sacred. When they understand where their contributions actually went, the betrayal will be experienced not just personally, but spiritually. The particular wound that comes from discovering that your most sincere impulse, the impulse to give, was used as a vehicle for fraud is one of the deepest kinds. It does not close quietly. It opens into conversations, and those conversations produce collective clarity that no amount of reputation management can contain. The authority that was borrowed from that community's trust has now been spent beyond the point of recovery. Here is what I need you to do right now. This is the most important instruction in everything that follows. Stop watching the collapse. You have waited through real seasons of real pain for the truth to surface and for the scales to find their balance. That waiting was not passive. It was the active work of staying in your integrity when the circumstances were designed to push you out of it. You are allowed to acknowledge what it cost. You are allowed to feel the weight of what is finally shifting, and then turn around, face forward. Because your vindication did not begin when the witness stepped forward. Your vindication began the day you decided you were worth healing. It began the day you stopped waiting for external confirmation of your own worth and simply decided, quietly, without ceremony, I am enough. I have always been enough. That decision was made on an ordinary day that probably felt unremarkable at the time, but it was the most powerful move in your entire arc. Everything now unfolding in the external world is the material dimension catching up to a decision your inner world already made and committed to. Yes, the community is going to be shocked. Yes, the evidence is surfacing. Yes, the scales have tipped. But none of those things are your permission to live fully. You have always been your own permission. What is happening in the external world right now is not a green light. It is a confirmation of what was always true, confirmation of what you chose to believe about yourself and your destiny in the seasons when absolutely nothing external was supporting that belief. So here is the real question. With the interference removed, with the door open, with the path clear, what are you building? There is something about evidence that most people do not fully appreciate. Evidence is not only documents. It is not only legal files and paper trails and signed records. Evidence is everything that exists as verifiable proof of what actually happened, and the most powerful evidence in your case has been accumulating in a form that no one can alter or fabricate. It is you. Every season you came through something designed to stop you. That is evidence. Every time you got up from a blow calibrated to keep you down. That is evidence. Every relationship you showed up to with genuine care while someone was actively telling people you were incapable of genuine care, that is evidence. Every time you brought your full self to a situation where you had every justified reason to be closed, that is evidence. The people who have been in genuine proximity to you, who have watched you over time, who know the real version of you rather than the described version, each of them carries testimony about who you actually are. Testimony that is consistent across multiple independent sources, sustained across a long period of time, does not crack under pressure. It holds because it is simply the truth, observed and confirmed from multiple independent vantage points. And here is what makes this particular kind of evidence irreplaceable. It cannot be manufactured retroactively. You cannot decide after the fact that you want years of people bearing witness to your character and then produce those years. Either you lived it or you did not. You lived it. through the confusing seasons, through the ones where nothing visible was shifting, through the ones where you had every justification to become someone harder and colder and more defended, you kept being who you actually are, and in doing so, you were compiling something no opposition can counter. The other side was also compiling evidence, just of a different kind, the kind that accumulates in contradictions, in patterns that only make sense when mapped against what was being concealed, in records that quietly preserve every decision that was supposed to stay invisible. That kind of evidence does not announce itself immediately. It waits, patient and thorough, until the right professional looks at it with the right question, and at that point it speaks with absolute clarity. What it says cannot be walked back. The evidence does not lie. In your favor and against those who acted against you, it has been doing its unhurried, thorough work this entire time. The moment for it to speak aloud has arrived. Let me tell you precisely what dismantled the system that was built to contain you. Not just what happened, but why it stopped working. Because this is the piece that gives you the power going forward. The entire apparatus was constructed on a single assumption, that you would remain in a frequency of lack, of unworthiness, of self-doubt. That assumption was the load-bearing wall. Every mechanism, the manufactured circumstances, the isolation, the interference at the moments of breakthrough, all of it was maintenance work on that one foundational condition: keep your inner world unsettled enough that you never fully land in your power, and the harvest continues. And then you started healing, not in a loud or dramatic way. The way genuine healing actually moves, incrementally, invisibly at first, in the private decisions that nobody else witnesses. One morning you chose yourself over the version of events you had been handed. One season you started doing things purely because they brought you joy, with no strategic justification required. And then came the moment, unremarkable from the outside, seismic from the inside, when you looked fully at yourself, without flinching, and thought, I actually like this person. After all of it, I choose this person. That was the moment the pipeline broke. You cannot extract from someone who has fully come home to themselves. The access point closes. What was being drawn outward automatically begins returning inward, and what had been generated by your energy and held elsewhere, your momentum, your compounding blessings, the aligned opportunities that kept being rerouted before they could reach you, began moving back toward you. Here is the specific connection to justice. When that energy began returning, it did not come back clean and silent. It came back with record. Energy redirected over a sustained period carries the accounting of where it has been, how it moved, and whose hands it passed through. That accounting is now informing what the human systems are finding in the physical evidence. It is why the investigation is moving with the precision that it is. It is why what is being uncovered matches so specifically with what was actually done. Everything collapsed because you healed yourself free. You were not trying to dismantle an operation. You were simply choosing yourself daily, quietly, without performance. And that choice was the one move they had no strategy for. The scales do not forget. They never did. Here is the present tense of everything that has been described. What is actively in motion right now, as you sit with this? There is a legal process underway, not theoretical, actual. Documentation is being examined. A deliberate trail is being reconstructed by people with the professional authority and the legal obligation to follow it to its conclusion. What sits at the end of that trail has your name on it, in the correct position, as the rightful recipient of something that was deliberately and provably diverted away from you. What is owed to you is in the process of being returned. The case being built on your behalf is not fragile. The person positioned to defend the other side is operating with a compromised understanding of the facts, because the person they are defending withheld exactly the details that would have changed what kind of defense was possible. Those details are no longer contained. The witness ensured that Beyond the legal dimension, something is shifting inside the community that was used against you. The witness's testimony did not only change the picture in formal proceedings, it gave the quiet doubters, the people who held unanswered questions for a long time, something they had not previously had: permission to voice the doubt out loud. Permission to ask the question the structure of authority had always been calibrated to prevent. And when people who have been separately carrying the same unspoken uncertainty finally locate each other and compare what they each independently noticed, the portrait that emerges does not match what they were told. It does not even come close to matching. The specific, chest-tightening shock of discovering that something you trusted completely was constructed on a foundation of deliberate deception, that shock is coming for the sincere members of that community, for the ones who kept their distance from you based on a fabricated account, for the ones who contributed in good faith to something that was exploiting their generosity. They are going to see clearly, and what they are going to see is going to change how they understand everything that happened around you. You do not need to manage any of that process. You do not need to guide anyone through their own reckoning. Your assignment is simply to be present, healed, whole, exactly the person your character has always been, and to let the contrast between who you actually are and who you were described as speak with its own undeniable weight. Let's be precise about what is coming, because the real version looks different from the version most people imagine. Restoration does not arrive as a single dramatic reversal. It arrives as a sustained correction, like a river that was dammed finally being allowed to flow. It does not explode through in one moment. It fills. It finds every space that was left empty by the seasons of artificial interference, and it occupies it quietly, thoroughly, with a completeness that makes the prior drought feel like the anomaly it always was. Materially, what was taken is in the process of being returned. The property, the inheritance, the funds that belong to you by right, the legal process now in motion exists specifically to correct what was deliberately misdirected. That correction is not a favor. It is not luck. It is the formal acknowledgement by the systems of human justice that what was done was wrong, and that what is yours belongs to you. Your calling, the purpose-driven work, the expression of your gifts, that was specifically blocked in the spaces where it would have carried the most impact, is now accessible in ways it was not before. The interference has been removed. Doors that were shut against you are opening, not because circumstances have randomly improved, but because the calculated obstruction of those doors has been exposed and dismantled. Your community is reconfiguring around the truth. Some of the people who kept their distance will come back and choose accountability. Some will simply make space for a fresh beginning without requiring a formal conversation about what came before. And new people are arriving, people whose perception of you was never filtered through a lie, people who see you with clear eyes, people whose energy is matched to where you actually are right now, rather than where you were deliberately kept. But here is the restoration that carries the most weight, deeper than the financial, more lasting than the community repair. Your name is being returned to you, clean, accurate. What was stolen when your character was circulated as a fiction, the right for people in the circles that mattered to know who you actually are, is being handed back. When the full truth surfaces in a way that is documented, evidential, and irrefutable, your name is no longer attached to the fiction they circulated. It is attached to the truth, and the truth, once it is fully in the light, does not go back into the dark. Vengeance is hot and temporary. Justice is final. What is coming for you has the specific gravity of something that cannot be undone. Your inner world is already living inside the restoration. That is what happens when you do the work before the external circumstances catch up. The inner version of your life is already operating from the healed, abundant, self-possessed place that the outer world is now arranging itself to reflect. You already have the peace, the clarity, the unshakable knowledge of your own worth that no event can now grant or revoke, because you built it from the inside out. Everything external is simply the material world catching up to what is already true about you, and it is catching up fast. The community's shock is not your signal to begin living fully. The legal outcome is not your permission slip. The financial restoration is not what makes you worthy of abundance. You are always worthy of it. What is happening now in the external world is not a green light. It is a confirmation. It is the material world finally, formally, catching up to what was always true. You are the chosen one who wins not by fighting every battle, but by outlasting, by continuing to build your inner world when every outer circumstance was designed to discourage exactly that, by trusting, not naively, but with the full weight of everything you have survived and everything you have become, that the divine is not absent, that the scales are not broken, that what is owed will be returned, what was sent against you will be reversed, and what is genuinely yours will find its way home to you. The community is going to be in shock. The evidence is already moving. The scales have tipped in your favor. What belongs to you is on its way back. All of it, with everything that accumulated during the time it was being held from you. And you are going to stand there in your peace and your purpose, in the fullness of who you are and everything you built while nobody was watching. And you are going to let your presence be the final undeniable proof. No speech, no retaliation, no declaration. Just the living, breathing evidence of someone who was meant to be diminished and instead became luminous. The scales tipped. They tipped in your favor. They were always going to.